Shabbat Shalom. So today I'm going to be looking at a lesson on covenants. So just kind of going over the different covenants that we have that are still in place. Are they still in place? And just kind of what the differences are, the similarities, and things that the Father Yahuwah has put together for us in these covenants. Okay. So Yahuwah deals and operates in covenants. I just also wanted to reference the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. Kind of breaks down covenants in three kind of different situations. They give some different examples. A covenant can be made amongst brethren, so two men can make it, a woman and a woman can make it, a man and a woman can make it. So that's kind of the first one amongst brethren. Second is by a superior being, so being the Most High Father Yahuwah, him making a covenant with us. And it talks about as far as imposing from a disposition or a stance of us having done something wrong. So we'll get into that a little bit more here in just a second. But the third one is also just because it could be for the opposite reason, for something that's positive. Him having a friendship built, and we'll see who we build friendships with, or a friendship with, and what kind of covenant that was. So they're kind of the three areas you can see a covenant. So can anyone tell me what their definition of a covenant is, or what they know a covenant to be? Anybody want to give any answers? A contract, okay. A promise, okay. Anything else? Anybody else?
Yeah. Somebody over here just said something. Who said it?
Agreement, okay. Yep, so some synonyms for covenant: vows, contract, agreement. Also you hear testament and marriage are often associated with the word covenant. So the word covenant, also in Hebrew, we have berith or berith, same part as what we use in Genesis, which is bereshit, is a covenant. So undertaking a legal contract, a guarantee, a pledge, a promise, a bond. That's Hebrews 12:85 for anyone who wants to check that one out. Also, another word that's going to be attached with it, or a word that you'll find often with covenant, is the Hebrew word brit. So a cutting. So we'll look at each covenant example, how it was cut or what was cut. So kind of look at that with each covenant as well. So a lot of times with covenant, you also hear the phrase covenant theology, which is normally in the churches, or what you're going to hear is what's replaced or what's been altered from what they believe the Old Testament is saying into what the New Testament is saying. So covenant theology kind of also can look at three different things. They look at the covenant of works. They say all the previous covenants in the Old Testament are covenants of works. We don't need to do those anymore. The second one would be covenant of grace and or favor. So that would be a covenant that they say is forever, which is something that we just have in place to replace those covenants of work. And then also kind of with that would be the covenants of redemption, so relating to the Messiah, that He has redeemed us from everything already, that everything is already in place, that we're good to go. All we have to do is just believe and have faith. So that's faith. That's what they'll kind of sum up as covenant theology. And we'll see how that is incorrect. So also another, like I mentioned, one of the synonyms for covenant is testament. So can anybody give me the difference between a covenant and a testament? Or is anybody familiar? Does anybody know there is a difference?
One you give while you're living, and one is after you pass. Right?
Okay, yep. So the main difference is, as Brother Moshe mentioned, is one is a living contract, and one deals with someone has to pass away. The testament deals with somebody actually has to die in order for it to take precedent and take place. So a living contract with a covenant as compared to a testament. Okay. So I got a couple more questions. So the first one, how many covenants are in place right now? Anybody tell me? 7? Anybody else? Agree with 7? Say so? Yay. I guess we're going to ride with 7, huh? Okay. So I would say 6, and I would say the 7th has not come to everyone yet, but I think he already knew that as well. But yeah, 7 total covenants is what we're looking at. 6 currently in progression or in place. The 7th hasn't fully got into place yet, but we'll look at that toward the end. It'll be the last one. And so just another note about covenants, the person or the people who are, or the person who is creating the covenant, that is where the strength of the covenant is. So any covenant that Yahuwah makes obviously is going to be a very strong covenant. As I mentioned, you can make covenants amongst brethren, but any covenant coming from him is going to be very strong and it'll be everlasting. So we'll always point that out in each of the covenants, just looking at making sure that we see that these are everlasting covenants and not ones that have been done away with or something that has been replaced. Okay, so another point just with kind of what I was mentioning with each covenant has its own symbolic references or things that you can associate with them. So I'm going to cover those now. So starting with Adam, or Adam being the first one, we associate the ground with Adam's covenant. Then we go to Noah. Noah, most people know Noah's is the rainbow, very easily seen a covenant sign. We also have Abraham, his is the stars, associating his covenant with the stars. Moses, the 2 tablets of stone, the commands were given on. David, Jerusalem is associated with his covenant. The Messiah, or Mashiach, the new covenant, or renewed covenant, the Passover cup and bread. And then lastly, the 7th covenant we'll get to is the peace covenant. So that's one associated by the kingdom. So. Alright, so if everyone can turn to Genesis 3, verses 14, we're going to go through 23. I'll be looking for volunteers, so if anyone would like to start, just let me know, but we'll read in Genesis 3, starting at verse 14.
And Yahuwah Elohim said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. And upon thy belly shall thou go, and thou shalt eat. Thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. And dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity now between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel.
So let me pause you right there, and we'll let you keep reading after this in a second. But just want to also, while we're going to hit it each time, I guess, with each section. So this first section is dealing with the serpent and what the results were of the curses from this particular part of the covenant. So cursed above all cattle and above all beasts of the field was the first part. Second part, cursed upon the belly shalt thou go, and from the dust thou shalt eat of it all the days of thy life. Are some of the curses that fit specifically to the serpent here on the first part of this scripture. So we'll let you go ahead and keep going more in verse 16.
Verse 16. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow shalt thou bring forth children, and thou desire shall be unto thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And to Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, and sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Verse 18. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Verse 19. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return to the ground, for out of it was thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And to Adam also, and to his wife did Yahuwah Elohim make coats of skins, and clothe them. And Yahuwah Elohim said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And unless he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever. Therefore Yahuwah Elohim sent him forth from the garden of Eden to till the ground for which he was taken. Verse 24. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life.
Very good. So we see that we have the serpent and what curses were placed upon him for leading the woman astray. And then we have specific results that were given to, or a specific punishment that was given to the woman as well. And so we're looking at those. So the serpent's seed shall bite the heel of the woman's seed. The labor pains are also evidence of that particular covenant. Desire for the Isha towards her Ish, and he shall rule over her. And that word rule is the Hebrew word teshoka, and that's Hebrews 8:6-9 for anyone who wants to reference that. And that's a longing or a stretching out for, not like a rulership in a negative way, but a specific desire toward the man. And then the specific results for the man or the Ish in this particular part of the covenant is the ground will be cursed, still evident today. In toil shall you eat of it your whole life, as far as working the ground. Everyone here may not be a farmer or actually out there tilling the ground, but you could still use that far as for reference, and we know that that still has to be done by somebody as an evidence of that covenant. And then also thorns and thistles, which are just obstacles of pain. It doesn't grow very easily. It's not always, for anyone who's done any yard work, it's always an evident work that you have to continue to pull and get those things out of there in order for the seed or the fruit to come forth more easily. And so those are the kind of the ones for each particular party, but then also for the man and the woman we have being kicked out of paradise as the ultimate kind of sign of that covenant, not being able to partake of that at that particular time like it was originally planned. So that's something we'll have to see hopefully later on. Okay, so this particular covenant, like I mentioned, a covenant or a brit, the cutting. So the cutting for this covenant was the animal skins. Yahuwah sacrificed the animals when it should have been Adam and Kawa, for their transgressions, for not listening to him, what he had already commanded them to do. So sacrificing of the animals, the bloodshed there. So cutting those skins, that was the cutting of this particular covenant. Any questions with that one? So that pretty much kind of covers the first covenant. So with Adam, so those things are still evident to be seen today. Would you agree? Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So let's see. Next, we're going to go to Noah's covenant. So the Noachic covenant. It's Genesis 6:18, starting at verse 18. You want to read?
6:18 to what?
We're going to go to 22.
But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive, and take thee unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that Yahuwah commanded him, so did he.
Okay. Excellent. So most people, everyone's familiar with this covenant. I think this one is probably one of the easier ones to kind of just definitely see the points being made. Very, very clear. The Most High gave Noah a set of guidelines and commands to follow. He followed them. No one else wanted to listen to him. This was a time when man became even more corrupt, from Adam to Noah, and where every thought was considered evil or dwelling upon evil. So Yahuwah had to cleanse, the earth and the world, so he did it by water. We know that the next one will be by fire, which is a cleansing source. So, Yahuwah established another covenant, but he did not replace the one that was made with Adam. So we know with Noah, what is the most with Noah, the most common thing, or what most people associate with Noah, is the ark. And so another word, or the Hebrew word for ark, is tabah, or tabah, which is Hebrews 8:3-9:2. And some of the other words that are associated with ark are shelter, safe dwelling, a storehouse, a set-apart place. So we know that the Most High deals with set-apart places, watching over us or covering us, allowing us to be in the midst of things, but protecting us, not just taking us away from something and then just destroying and demolishing something. So Noah's covenant was with him, his descendants, and every living creature. So all the living creatures that we have today, them being present and not being wiped out through that flood is a sign of that covenant. What was promised, I said, to be never cut off again by water. The next time it would be fire. So the rainbow is the visual sign that we can see after a rain shower, in the bow in the clouds. That is a sign for an everlasting covenant. The rainbow is a covering or protection, sign of protection of Elohim keeping his promises to us, and that we can remember the covenant that he made with us. Something that we can see. If we turn to Genesis 8:20, I'll read this one. This is the evidence of the cutting. Genesis 8:20. It says, "And Noah builded an altar unto Yahuwah, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar." So just how that particular covenant was cut by sacrifice as well. So it doesn't say anything about replacing the other covenant. It's just adding to and just keep building. Any questions with this one? This covenant?
Isn't there a misconception that the animals that were taken were clean? Because I've always heard that it was just never really stressed that these animals that were taken were clean animals. It was just that there were two of every kind taken. That's what I was taught in church. But this really sticks out because it specifies that the animals that were taken were clean animals.
Well, okay, we'll see. So the animals that were taken were two of every kind, but the only ones that were sacrificed were the clean.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you go back up to, 17, bring forth thee every living thing that is with thee, all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing, because we know creeping things we're not supposed to eat of.
Exactly.
Would be an example, upon the earth, that may breed abundantly in the earth and fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And then 19 says, every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. So even the ones like the pig, the swine, or anything that we're not supposed to eat, also was in the ark, but we just weren't allowed to sacrifice those unclean animals.
Okay.
So what was the question?
Just about unclean animals.
Chapter 7, the breakdown of it when it talks about how many unclean and clean from chapter 7.
So,
Yeah, 7 and 8.
It's like 2 unclean and 7 clean, and vice versa.
right, so, right.
So were they eating meat at that time? That would be another question, because part of the God telling you, well, if you're omnipotent, you eat meat or if you eat plants at that time, but they didn't eat meat, because when you go to see later on, it says now that I'm going to allow you to start eating flesh of that, now it was okay to do so. So, at that point, of course, I would say, swine and something like that, when you were eating, that you were part of the God.
That's a good question.
I don't think so either.
I would
Talking about
think,
during the time when you brought them into the boat, or after or before?
Both.
Both?
Yeah, right when we came in, while they was in Ark, and right when they left out before we received that command about the blood of all the animals to be upon them.
before,
Right.
and he did give him the okay. I didn't see nothing about him saying okay while they was on the ship, but he did tell them after they came off the ship that they could eat it. So before I know they wasn't, and then after they came out, I know they did was. But while they was on the ship, I never seen anything saying that they did.
It's mostly the clean and unclean has to do with the dietary.
Right.
So, yeah, so if it's being written by the priesthood during Mosai's time, they would view those animals at that time as being clean and unclean.
Right.
Because they themselves were eating meat or had dietary law. But Noah at that time was not eating meat.
Right.
Yeah, and I just go to show the perspective in which the scribes actually wrote the text, and we know that was the Levites looking into the past because Moses was revealed to Moses. Not something that's why I put it out there, because it's something good to think about.
Okay.
Right. But you know what's also interesting though is that when you go to Bereshit, the 4th chapter, it makes mention of offerings. It talks about a maker and it talks about a whole lot of offering. It's not laid out in plain sight, but it's making mention now is that the argument is that was the father now actually trying to start a Shabbat priest line from the very beginning. And if that was the case now is that when we have the Ola offering or the bird offering, there's a procedure, the way that animal's supposed to be, slaughtered and killed and everything like that. And then it talks about the fats and the organs and things like that. But the meat, the priests were able to eat. So the argument then becomes now was let me just read it, okay, so we can get some maybe clarity on it. Just real quick,
No problem.
okay, in Bereshit, the 4th chapter, it says in Adamic, his wife, that she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man-child from Yahuwah. And again she bare his son. And then it begins to talk about their occupation. It says, Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And then the argument would then come down, were these sheep now just used for grazing and keeping down the grass, or were they actually able to use the sheep for dietary purposes, or just for cutting the wool off and making clothing? Well, what's happening here, it says that Cain was a tiller of the ground in verse 3, and in the process of time, and so if we look up that word process of time, it's actually talking about an appointed time that the Father already had in place, because at this juncture here now is that Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, okay, and then we have now a ceremony being performed, and when you begin to look at what is a maker and what is a olah, they're actually talking about some type of atonement or some type of first fruit offering is being made now to the Father. And then, as you know, it goes on to say that in the process of time, it came that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground and offering it to Yahuwah. And Abel, he also brought of the firstling of his flock and of the thereof. And Yahuwah had respect to Abel and his offering. But again, just to make a long story short, I'm not dragging it on, is that it's one of those things. It's really one of those things. It's not sketched out that they were actually eating meat. But what I was always looking at is that this particular service that they're doing, and they're looking forward, what was the Levites doing at the Day of Atonement and at first fruits and things like that, they were actually eating the meat. The priests.
Oh, the priests,
they would actually eat the meat. And so now, being that we had a transgression that happened in the garden, where we have now first fruits, as it's been mentioned here, the word Bekarim or first fruits, there comes a time in each of the festivals of Yahuwah where services need to be done, okay, in order to show recognition or you're acknowledging the Father. And do we now have the beginning stages now where we see where people are beginning now to start a stage of getting back into covenant relationship again with the Father? And one more thing now is that there's an argument, which is a strong argument, what we're not going to do today, is that this is actually the beginning of a Zadok priest line, which falls back into Melchizedek and what was actually going on with Abraham and him when they talk about the wine and the bread and incense. So it's not etched.
I got you on that.
It's not etched out because
on Bereshit chapter 3, I'm sorry, just going to add this part, we can see in verse 21 it says, also I found
it says, and his Yashra'al, Yahuwah Elohim made tunics of skin and clothing. Tunics of skin, we see that later on in the scriptures in regards to using wool for clothing.
Right.
So if the Most High is making tunics of skin, that could be the initiation in regards to the sacrifice. That was the precedent in regards to mankind for the atonement. Because Adam and Eve were supposed to die at that time.
Exactly.
But the Most High overlooked it because the sacrifice was done.
Right.
So this was the beginning process of the ceremony that you were speaking about. That was then picked up by Adam and Eve's children and their children, etc.
Right, exactly, because after the flood, and you talk about the covenants, it made mention that there was a covenant made where, again, we had, again, an animal sacrifice.
Right.
You know, and so, depending on what time of the year, sometimes, you know, you burnt up the whole offering. You know, so,
Oh, you had a hand right there.
Oh, good.
No, I was just asking, I didn't hear, you said this was the beginning of first fruits?
no, what it's talking about, it says he brought up the firstlings of his flock. When you look up the word firstlings and of your flock, there's a certain time of the year where you're supposed to bring your best.
Right.
Like, take, for example, the firstlings of your flock is not etched in stone, but we do know during Passover that there was a lamb set apart, okay? And that was the first or the best of the sheep that you had.
Okay.
That was used as an atonement, or it was used as just recognition that you're acknowledging that the Father actually has blessed you throughout the year.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah. And so, but again, with the Qumran community and with the whole priest line with Zadok, it goes all the way back, even to this point here.
It starts showing you the time of Noah.
Right.
Certain days were set apart as well.
Yeah.
The sacrifice for the Jubilees gives you more information in regards to what was going on at that time. That was the precedent that was set out that Israel was going to die.
Yeah.
And then they picked it up in Moshe.
Right, exactly. Sorry about that.
That's all good. Good dialogue to have. Okay. So next we're going to get into the Abrahamic covenant. So we'll turn to Genesis 12. We're just going to start with the first 3 verses, and we're going to kind of inch our way down and into a couple of chapters. I was, definitely considered this one, one of the bigger ones. I mean, not to say that the other ones are not as strong, because each covenant builds upon another. But with this one, we're definitely going to see a lot of key things, and it's probably the most intricate so far of the 3 that we have so far. So Genesis 12, okay.
I was gonna do the read.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
What we doing?
Just 12, 1 through 3.
Okay. Now the sovereign had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
So just in those 3 verses there, a lot was said. First, Yahuwah told Abram to leave his family, leave his father's house, go to a land that he had chose, that he would make Abram a great nation, bless him and make his name great, or make his name be a blessing. Yahuwah also would bless those who blessed him, and vice versa, would curse those who cursed him. All the families of the earth will be blessed through Abram. So there were 10 generations from Noah to Abram, from the time of the flood up to Abram. And this is where we see the friendship. Abram was considered a friend of Yahuwah, and this is where the friendship, him actually building that with the people, especially after all the wickedness that was in the earth, and having only to look at a certain line or certain bloodline, which Noah, continued through Noah up until Abraham. So this is where a lot of personal relationship building comes into play. So the next one I wanted to go to was Genesis 15, verses 1 through 5. This is going to point out the symbol of this particular covenant. You want to read that one as well?
Ready?
Yep, good.
After these, the word of the sovereign came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said unto sovereign Elohim, What wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. This is mine.
Yes.
Okay. And behold, the word of the sovereign came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So thy seed be.
So Yahuwah makes a clear distinction that Eleazar would not be his heir, that he would actually have his own son in his older age. So that was a clear distinction, and that they would be very numerous. So that is the symbol of this particular covenant, is that his seed or his children would be as numerous as the stars, as we know is too numerous for us to count. So a sign of that blessing there. We're going to go to next 17, Genesis 17, verse 2.
Bereshit, or Genesis, the 17th chapter, verse 2. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and the father talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of a multitude of nations, or many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, a king shall come out of thee, and I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee, in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be an Elohim unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and unto thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim.
Okay, pause right there. So just a couple things I wanted to point out with those particular verses. Probably one of the bigger things to see is the name change. So Abram's name changed to Abraham, and so with that, what was added was a hey in Hebrew. So adding the hey to his name makes that which is revealed. So that's very key with the name change. Elohim revealed himself or his esteem to Abram, and so now he's trying to build from working with individual people to building a nation of people that he can work through as a group instead of just the individuals. So his name became esteemed, which was very high honor to receive. Some other things with that one was still kind of talking about building that nation, making a nation of not just kings and priests, but a multitude of nations. And it said it was an everlasting covenant, or something throughout all generations, through 1,000 generations. Let's see, I think there's a little bit more I wanted to go through. So actually, could you continue more right down to 13 from where you stopped?
Start at verse 8.
Verse 8, correct.
Verse 9. And Elohim said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you, and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations, He that is born in the house, or bought with money, or any stranger, which is not of thy seed, he that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with the money, with thy money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. He hath broken my covenant.
Okay. Yeah, so you stop right there. And so with that one, definitely wanted to point out that with the circumcision, that would obviously be the cutting taking place with this particular covenant of every male 8 days or older, and not just Hebrews, brothers and sisters, or brothers, but also other nations that dwell with thee. They also must be circumcised. Was a particular point brought out with this covenant. Okay, good.
I have a question because hearing some other Israelite camp doctrine on this, they teach that it's kind of symbolic, and this is, it's not an issue with me at all, but I'm just saying that some camps teach it's kind of symbolic, but is it actually as literal as it sounds?
I would think so.
It sounds really cut and dry.
Well, I know that, some of the scriptures, that in the New Testament, I think, when people reference, circumcising of the heart,
right,
is all that's needed. But we know that the Most High deals with these covenants, and we know that with the cutting, it would need to be a physical representation, just like the remission of sins, the blood that needs to be shed, it would also need to be a physical bloodshed that the Messiah had to care for us. So I would say that it needs to still take place, but
Good, just remember.
I've heard that before. Yeah, it's not optional. I would say it's not
It's not
optional.
optional. Just all you gotta do is remember Joshua.
Right.
Remember when they came out and when they did what they did, he had to do what? Recircumcise. He had to circumcise everybody because all of them was born on the way.
Right.
And he had a mountain of flesh. Yeah. Yeah.
And it just stopped with Abrahamic history.
It kept going. Yeah.
Right.
And also, we have to keep in mind, a lot of people misconstrue and misinterpret what Apostle Shaul is saying. You got to remember who he's talking to at the time when he speaks of the circumcision of heart. Now, we know once your heart gets circumcised, if you go back and look at the issue that Mashiach Yahushua has what Yashra'al is, he never had their heart. So guess what? If you circumcise your heart, no matter what is written in Torah, you're going to automatically do that. This is why he always taught circumcision of the heart first. Because you see, they were already circumcised in the flesh, and when he said their hearts were what? Far from him. He never had the heart. So when he brings us out and brings us back into the wilderness, why does he say he's going to try us? He's going to see if he has our heart. The heart has always been the issue. That's why even the first tablets, I hope I'm not getting going too far here, getting too late. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all good.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But even if you wanted the scriptures to actually back that up, you can go to Ezekiel, the 44th chapter, verses 7. And I'll just read down just a little bit, whether or not there actually has to be a physical circumcision with the man now. It says in Ezekiel, the 44th chapter, verse 7. This is a complaint that the father is having with the nation of Yashra'al, the priests, etc. It said that you have brought into my sanctuary strangers, uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in the flesh, to be in my sanctuary to pollute it. Even in my house, when you offer my bread, the first, the fat and the blood, that you have broken my covenant because of all your abominations. Verse 8. And you have not kept the charge of my holy things, but you have set keepers of my charge in my sanctuary for yourselves. Verse 9 does it. But thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, no stranger uncircumcised in heart, nor uncircumcised in flesh, shall enter into my sanctuary, or any stranger that is among the children of Yashra'al. So it has to be in the heart and in the flesh.
That's pretty clear.
Oh, you got a question?
Okay, sure.
So based on 12 and 13, so we, because it says purchase a stranger, what we money. So that means if we had a servant, they had to be following our law. They couldn't have their own worship, their own whatever they want to do. They had to do what we were doing.
Right. Absolutely.
It doesn't say we adopted children, it's just servants, the stranger that we what we money.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so some other things noted with this particular covenant that was mentioned was that this, well, it's not actually noted in the scripture, but we know that circumcision is also attached to the Passover, which is one of the feast days. You definitely want to make sure that as a male, you cannot participate otherwise without being circumcised, so we know that. And that would also link you with the Messiah, the Mashiach, so you wouldn't be able to partake with anything with him if you weren't physically circumcised, as well as circumcised. So to 1,000 generations, this is mentioned in Psalms 105. I'm just going to read this one, Psalms 105, verse 8, starting at verse 8. Psalms 105, starting at verse 8 through 10, says, He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, which covenant he made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. So very clear cut there what it's saying and how it goes from Abraham all the way to Isaac, unto Jacob, and the generations to 1,000 generations afterwards. So still a long way to go for 1,000 generations. So just another note that faith equals believing in Elohim's promises, and having faith in those promises is attributed to or equal to righteousness. So that's what we're trying to keep, keep the righteous laws, to be a righteous group of people. So just having that faith and belief that this is what we're supposed to be doing. These are the things that he said and lined up for us to do in order to show our commitment and belief in his covenants, that they are everlasting, is to keep all the statutes that he's commanded for us with each one. So with that will be the circumcision, keeping the Passover, the feast days, all that will be included. So the three main parts with that particular covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, we have him becoming a father of many nations, his name change, and his children being numerous as the stars of heaven, and the circumcision are the main parts of that particular covenant. So next we want to look at Moses or the Moshe or the Mosaic covenant. So I'm going to read some notes here before I go to some scriptures here. So Jacob and his 12 sons migrated to Egypt to live for 400 years, and this would set the stage for the Exodus. The friendship that started with Abraham grew into not just a particular single person, but through a nation of people, become a nation of people. So this would include the children of Israel as well as those who escaped with them from Egypt, leaving out as a mixed multitude. The nation was born in Exodus 2, verse 24, stating that, And Elohim heard their groaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And 25, And Elohim looked upon the children of Israel, and Elohim had respect unto them. So even though Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had passed away, the covenant did not. If someone could read Exodus 6, verse 4 for me. Verse 4, yep.
Exodus 6, verse 4. And I have also established my covenant with them, to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers.
Go ahead and read verse 5 as well. Verse 5 and 6.
And I have also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage. and I have remembered my covenant. Wherefore say unto the children of Israel, I am Yahuwah, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with stretched out arm, and with great judgment.
Excellent. Okay, so just pointing out that there's a land given, and also in this particular covenant, the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. And that we had to be brought up out of this bondage in Egypt. So just a question, does anybody know, before we even get into it a little further, what is the main difference with the Mosaic covenant? Or is there something that's different that you know with this particular covenant over any of the other ones? Sorry? Specific commandments, okay. Anything else? Bondage? Also good. Something else, I'm looking for something a little bit more specific.
His name.
Also good, yeah. Yeah. So also, I would say the main thing, or what I was kind of looking at or hinting at, is the marriage, is the marriage contract. So that would be the main thing that I would say comes out to me when I'm thinking about the covenant that Moses had as the mediator of that particular covenant. It's a marriage contract, or a marriage covenant. Another thing is conditional. So it gave what would happen if we did obey, and what would happen if we did not obey. And so we know that today we're in a land of our captivity, and that we are in a cursed state as a group of people. But if we turn our hearts back towards Him, and let our cries go up to the heavens, that we can, get those lifted up off of us as a people and return back to our land and be able to be one again with the Father. So Moses had to break the first 2 tablets because of the golden calf. We know that particular incident was where they were trying to be like the other nations, trying to be like the other people, and were disobedient to what the Father had told them, or what Moses had told them as a command of the Father. And we know that, so the first time Yahuwah gave the tablets to Moses on the mount, He was seeking us. The second time Moses had to bring the tablets up to the mountain, where Elohim had to cut them. So the first time, symbolic of Him seeking us, and now in this time where we are now, we have to seek Him. So we have to come to Him. He's laid it all out for us, and we have to use what we have and seek Him in order to come back towards Him. So we want to go to Exodus 34. We'll start at verse 10. I'm going to read 10, 27, and 28. And he said, Behold, I make a covenant before all that people. I will do marvels such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among which thou art shall see the work of Yahuwah, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. Verse 27. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, or Moshe, Write these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee and with Israel, or Yashra'al. And he was there with Yahuwah 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tables or tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commands, the 10 commandments. So the 2 tablets of the 10 commands is the symbol of this particular covenant. And this is what established Israel as a people, or Yashra'al as a people. And not no longer just individuals working with individuals, but a nation or a group of people. Okay, so next we want to go to Deuteronomy 4, verse 13. Just 13 on that one.
And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone.
So just jumping over, so 2 tablets of stone again, just mentioning it there. Going to chapter 9, verse 11. Same book, Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 11.
And it came to pass at the end of 40 days and 40 nights that Yahuwah gave me 2 tables of stone, even 2 tables of the covenant.
So just another scripture just pulling what the symbol of this particular covenant is. So we also know that Shabbat, or the Sabbath day, is also a sign or a mark of the covenant given to Adam, but it is an everlasting covenant. And we're going to look at that here as it's stated in Exodus 31, verse 16. Exodus 31, verse 16. Let's see. Wherefore the children of Yashra'al shall keep the Sabbath or Shabbat day to observe the Sabbath through their generations for a perpetual covenant. So it doesn't get much more clear than that it is something that we are supposed to keep. It is a sign of obedience, that we're seeking to keep that day, not doing our own will. And that is a day set apart towards to Yahuwah that we keep as a sign for a perpetual covenant. It's also mentioned again, we're going to look at in Leviticus 24, verse 8. Anybody want to read it?
Every Shabbat you shall,
Okay, yes, I'm good.
every Sabbath you shall set in order before the Most High continually, being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant.
Right. So just stating again, that it's an everlasting covenant. It's a sign that we dwell before Yahuwah continually as an to keep the Shabbat, an everlasting covenant. Okay, a few more scriptures I wanted to pull before we move on. So let's go to Leviticus 26. And we're going to start at verse 9 and then jump down. So 26 and 9.
For I will have respect unto you and make you fruitful and multiply you and establish my covenant with you.
Okay, jump down 42 to 45.
Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbath, while she lies desolate without them. And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them. For I am sovereign, their Elohim. But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of bondage in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their Elohim. I am the sovereign.
So definitely, so seeing that even through iniquity and seeing through not obeying the Father's word, that he still would hold that land, still keep the covenants that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not one of them was done away with. Not one replaced the other, only was added to and strengthened. Even through the disobedience that Israel would lead into or stray away from through disobedience. that his covenants would still stand. Let's go to Judges 2, just verses 1 and 2. Judges 2, verses 1 and 2. Okay. Volunteer.
And the Malachim of Yahuwah came up from Gilgal to Shechem and said, I made you to go up out of Mizraim and have brought you into the land which I swear unto your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you.
Hold on, could you read that one more time? Just that last.
I will never break my covenant with you.
And then verse 2 as well.
And ye shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. Ye shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have ye done this?
So we know that Israel has a reputation. Yeah, sorry, tongue-tied there. Of wanting to be like the other nations and not following what Yahuwah has set up for us to do wholeheartedly or through all the way through. Only doing some of it, which is not good. So that's something that, seeing this example, we should look and always try to strive to do the whole thing completely and be in one as best we can, because we see with if you're halfway or you're partial, or you're lukewarm, we know that those scriptures talk about it's not good to be lukewarm. It's good to be all the way in and not all the way out. So one particular word I did want to point out in this passage is the word league. In verse 2, it says, you shall make no league. That's the same word there as the Hebrew 1285, or what we covered earlier, the berith, or berit. So that's dealing with the covenant. So you shouldn't make any covenant or compact agreement with the inhabitants of that land. So I just thought that was also interesting to see. Just always making sure we're kind of checking up on certain words, because we know with the Greek and the English and the Aramaic and some other languages that the translations, that we just want to make sure that we're getting the best understanding that we can from it. So using your concordance to see that that's the same word. So making no covenant with the other nations is something that was given to us to not to do. Okay, so one that most people, I think, or everyone should be pretty familiar with, we'll go to Jeremiah, or Yashra'al 31. I'll get Yirmi to read that one since his namesake over there. Yashra'al 31, just 35 through 37.
Thus saith Yahuwah, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and by the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, which divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart before me, saith Yahuwah, then the seed of Yashra'al also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith Yahuwah, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith Yahuwah.
We still got the sun and the moon and the stars as ordinances, so we know that we are still a people, and we know that we are not a spiritual Israel, which is a lot of things you may hear also with the covenant theology, that Israel is just a group of believers, or it could be anybody, that there is no longer a remnant or a seed. So we still have those ordinances, and we know that no man can search out the deepest parts of the sea or the earth, and that those are also things that is a sign that was said in Jeremiah that there's still a seed or still a remnant here on earth of Yashra'al. And the last one I wanted to pull out in reference for this one was Ezekiel or Ezekiel 16, verse 60.
Ezekiel 16, verse 60. Nevertheless, I will remember my covenant with thee in the days of thy youth, and I will establish unto thee an everlasting covenant.
So all these were just kind of to pull that, nothing says that it's a temporary covenant. These are everlasting covenants, things that we will continue forever through many generations. So just wanted to pull those. Okay, so next we want to look at the Davidic covenant. So the people, we know that Israel called for a king. They wanted to be like the other nations. They no longer wanted the judges. Shemuel or Samuel was the last judge, but he was also a prophet. He anointed Shaul or Saul to be the first king, but we know that he ended up not working out too well for Israel. So Yahuwah said he would send his own chosen person, which was Daud or David, the son of Jesse, to be that particular king. So we'll read that in 1 Samuel 16, verse 13. First Samuel 16, verse 13. Yeah, Brielle, would you like to read? Just 13. Just 13.
And Shemuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the spirit of Yahuwah came upon Daud from that day and onward. And Shemuel arose and went to Ramah.
Okay, and then one more. We go to 2 Samuel, verse 5, or 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 3. Shemuel or Samuel chapter 5, verse 3. That one as well.
Okay, 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 3. And all the elders of Israel, I'm sorry, this is the scriptures translation. And all the elders of Israel came to the sovereign at Lebron, and sovereign Daud, and made a covenant with them at Lebron before Yahuwah. And they anointed Daud sovereign over Yashra'al.
So if you read it in the King James, it says, and King David made a league, so it uses that word league again, but it's also just covenant or berit. So just another example of Daud being king, being anointed king or set apart as king for Israel. So David was anointed with this covenant. Shaul or Saul was not anointed with a covenant. David was considered to be a man who sought the heart of Elohim, so that's another reason why he was chosen and why he was a better king for Israel. He had it in his heart to build a temple for Yahuwah, but it was actually his son, Solomon or Shalamah, who would bring that into fruition. And so I have a longer passage I wanted to go over. It's 1 Chronicles 17. Starting at verse 1, I'll read this one. Okay, 1 Chronicles chapter 17, verse 1. Now it came to pass, as Daud or David sat in his house, that David or Daud said to Nathan the prophet, Lo, I dwell in the house of cedars, but the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah remains under curtains. Then Nathan said unto Daud, Do all that is in thine heart, for Elohim is with thee. And it came to pass the same night that the word of Elohim came to Nathan, saying, Go and tell Daud my servant, Thus saith Yahuwah, Thou shalt not build me an house to dwell in, for I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I brought up Yashra'al out of this, or unto this day, but have gone from tent to tent, and from one tabernacle to another. Wheresoever I have walked with Israel or Yashra'al, spake I a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, Why have you not built me a house of cedars? Now therefore, thus shalt thou say unto my servant David or Daud, Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, even from following the sheep, that thou shouldest to be ruler over my people, Yashra'al. I have been with thee whithersoever thou hast walked, and have cut off all thine enemies from before thee, and have made thee a name like the name of the great men that are in the earth. Also, I will ordain a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, and they shall dwell in their place, and shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them any more, as at the beginning. Verse 10. And since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, moreover, I will subdue all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that Yahuwah will build thee an house. And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers, that I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me an house, and I will establish his throne forever. And I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him that was before thee. But I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established evermore. Verse 15. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak to David. So this is where it was decreed that it would be Solomon or his son, his future son, to build the temple for Yahuwah, and not David himself, and that he would be great through his seed, and that greatness would be through his seed, through Solomon. So with Daud's covenant, this covenant was cut by the sacrifices offered on the altar by David. Daud's altar became the permanent altar for the temple at Jerusalem, where burnt and peace offerings were made. And that's going to be in 1 Chronicles 21, verse 26. It says, And Daud built an altar unto Yahuwah, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, and called upon Yahuwah, and he answered him from heaven by fire upon the altar of burnt offering. And one more example in chapter 22 of 1 Chronicles, the first verse, says, Then Daud said, This is the house of Yahuwah Elohim, and this is the altar of the burnt offering of Yashra'al. So those are just some of the examples of David's covenant, what was being cut, or the offerings, and through his son would be the altar, or the temple would be through Solomon, and that we would see as a place that Yahuwah would dwell in. Any questions with that one? Okay. So going on to what we call the renewed covenant, the cup and bread of Mashiach, or the Messiah. So we want to go to Psalms 111, verse 9.
Redemption unto his people. He said, He hath commanded his covenant forever. Holy and revered is his name.
Excellent. No, just yeah, go ahead and go to read 10.
The fear of the Most High is the beginning of wisdom, and good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever.
Yep, so just if we're keeping His commandments, following His will. We know that we will be redeemed in the end. That's the covenant that we are supposed to be keeping is something, like I said, just following the same continuation of it's always forever, it's everlasting, it's perpetual. As long as we're doing what we need to be doing, we can reap the benefits of it, but the covenant, even if we don't do what we're supposed to be doing, will continue. So, the northern tribes, however, we know rebelled and created a lot of division. The house of Israel refused to go up to Jerusalem to worship Yahuwah. Instead, they built temples to idols, which we know would get them eventually divorced. Also, captivity, Assyrian captivity specifically at this time, is what was seen for the house of Israel. Okay, so next I want to go to Ezekiel or Ezekiel 36, verses 22 through 28. Ezekiel 36, starting at 22 through 28. Okay.
Ezekiel chapter 36, starting at verse 22. Therefore say to the house of Yashra'al, thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, I do not this for your sake, O house of Yashra'al, but for my set-apart name's sake, which you have profaned upon the heathen where you went. And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which you have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen will know that I am Yahuwah, said Yahuwah Elohim, when I will be sanctified in you before their eyes. For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. Then I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you will be clean from all your filthiness and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new ruach will I put within you, and I will take away the stony part out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. And I will put my ruach within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them. And you will dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you will be my people, and I will be your Abrahamic.
Excellent. So, just mentioning there that Yahuwah would cleanse us. He's going to cleanse us, remove the filthiness, give us a new heart, causing us to keep the commands. That we don't have to choose anymore. It'll automatically be there. A spirit that will walk in the statutes and keep the judgments that we've been meant to keep since the beginning. This is who he's speaking specifically to the house of Yashra'al, the house of Israel, who was divorced, where they completely disregarded the statutes and the commandments and had to be punished and had to be separated. But that's completely why the Mashiach had to come back, and he said he came back for the lost sheep of the house of Israel in order to bring them back, in order to be one and to be a single nation again. So we touched on it earlier in Reveiw, that predicting the reunification of the two houses. But we also want to look at Yashra'al gave the cup and the bread. It was to people. The people who were around him were not the other nations that a lot of the covenant theologists will say it was people of the church, or just everyone was there, but it was the house of Israel and the house of Judah that was present with them. And so we want to go to the New Testament part of that, where it was mentioned in Jeremiah 31. So we want to go to Hebrews 8 and 8. Hebrews 8 and 8, starting there.
Sister, Rosh, you guys have
Okay.
I wanted to feel left out.
Okay, you're right. Yeah. You could go through 12, 8 through 12.
Eight.
8 through 12.
Hebrews 8:8. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Yahuwah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yahuwah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to the unrighteousness and their sins and their iniquities, and I will remember no more.
You can go ahead and read that last one as well.
In that he saith, a new covenant he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
So and I wanted to, I guess, go ahead and add that one because a lot of times that particular verse is used to say that it's everyone, it's the other nations as well. And it is them, but it's not in that particular fashion. And they have to come through Israel, or Yashra'al. So we know that the Most High deals with a particular group of people, and that's how he operates. He always uses a mediator. Yahushua is our mediator, and that's who we communicate to let our prayers and our requests go up to the Father. So the same way with the people, the other nations, they'll have to come through us because they won't know the exact ways, and they're not practicing the commandments or keeping the commandments or the Moedim or the feast days and things like that. So. But we also wanted to point out, just particular for people who may not have or not, look up that word new. So if you read anywhere in the New Testament, well, maybe not anywhere, but for most places in the New Testament, where you see the word new, especially in this particular chapter, is dealing with the Greek word kainos, which means to refresh, and it's similar to the Hebrew word. Hadash Moyer, the Hebrew word for renew or fresh. Hadash, right? Hadash. Okay, yeah. So it's refresh or something that had to have once been. It's a renewing. So that's where we know that it's not where it would be the Greek word neos if it was truly something new. Is where we would normally see. So some instances you do see that. But in this particular chapter, that word new is refreshed, or kainos. And I want to also, so we read the latter half first, so I also in this same chapter want to jump up to the top and just for further clarification, read verses 1 through 6. Same chapter. So I just wanted to read it almost in a reverse order, but just to jump back up one, just to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. Just verses 1 through 6 here.
Now the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty and Shamayim, or heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which Yahuwah pitched, or Elohim pitched, and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moshe was admonished of Elohim, when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mountain. Verse 6. But now hath he ordained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the minister of a better testament, which was established upon better promises or covenants.
All right, so I just wanted to reiterate that part about working through a mediator. Yashra'al is our mediator, and him having seen the heavenly things, and us practicing those things here, him coming is allowing us to better partake in those heavenly things to come, or being able to get to that point once he makes his final return. So a couple more. Let's look. We're going to go to John 4, verse 34. I'm still okay. It was on time, correct? You said an hour and a half, or is that an hour and a half, right? Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So you're looking on 4 and
4:34.
4:34. Yahusha said unto them, My meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Verse 35. Say not you, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white and already to harvest.
Okay, you're just 34.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay. And also, can you read John 5, 36 through 39?
But I have greater witnesses than that of Yehochanan, for the workers which the Father hath given me to finish, the same works that I do bear witness of me, that the Father hath sent me. And the Father himself which hath sent me hath borne witness of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his shape. And you have not his word abiding in you. For whom he hath sent, him you believe not. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me.
So just kind of clarifying what the work that Mashiach, or the Messiah, is coming to do. He's coming to do his Father's work, or his Father's will, not his own accord. And just one more, just jump down to 43.
43. I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another should come in his own name, him you will receive.
So we know that in Hebrew the names are key, and you know that Yahushua's name means that the salvation is through Yahuwah, or Yah saves. So we know that the name is key, that what he came to do is his Father's will, not his own will. So Yahushua came to renew the covenant among two people. That hasn't officially happened yet, but he has shed that blood, or the remission of sins, by giving his life as a perfect sacrifice, as the perfect Passover lamb. And also has set the stage for the redemptive plans to take place that will come into full once he has come back again, once the 144 have been sealed. So that is the good news, and that's what a lot of times we don't hear as what just the good news is, just the faith, or the favor or the grace, but it's really that his kingdom, or the Father's kingdom, will be coming, is at hand, so that's what we're trying to make sure that we're in right accordance. That's why we're all here today, to keep Shabbat this evening. So those are the rehearsals, or the practices that we want to keep in place in order to be in the right position to understand the end times more clearly. Okay, so wanted to go to back into Exodus, Exodus 24. And we want to look at the blood of the covenant, so we're going to go to Exodus 24, verses 3 through 8. Okay.
And Moshe came and told the people all the words of the sovereign, and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which the sovereign said we will do. Moshe wrote all the words of the sovereign and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the hill and 12 pillars, according to the 12 tribes of Yashra'al. And he said, young men of the children of Yashra'al, which offer burnt offerings and sacrifice peace offerings of oxen unto the sovereign.
Through 8.
Oh.
Okay.
And Moshe took half the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people. And they said, all that the sovereign hath said will we do, and be obedient. And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which the sovereign had made with you concerning all these words.
Okay, so just wanted to. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so just wanted to see, go back to read the part where Israel said, I do, which is the marriage covenant, the marriage contract, and the blood that was sprinkled is sprinkled on not only the people, but on the altar as well. Okay. These next ones, these are just some single scriptures, just also dealing with the renewed covenant or the renewed covenant. So I want to look at. So Mark 14, verse 24. Okay, it says, and he said unto them, this is my blood of the New Testament, or renewed testament, or covenant, which is shed for many. We're going to read Luke 22, verse 20. Luke 22, verse 20 says, likewise also the cup after supper, saying, this cup is a New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you. And the last one is 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 25. So just another witness of the renewed covenant statement here. After the same manner, also he took the cup when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do you as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. So any questions about this particular covenant? So not all has been fulfilled, and that's the kind of the last part I wanted to touch on with this is some examples of that particular Greek word, plerou, which is used in Greek 4:1-7. So the Greek word plerou, Greek 4:1-7. So it's used in several scriptures, and a lot of people would use the word fulfilled as it's done away with, but it's the word plerou or fulfill is not to completely be done away with, but it just means to complete or to complete a task. It doesn't mean that you don't complete it, or don't continue to do it. So just like each day we have to keep the laws and commands, and once we did them the day before, it doesn't mean we don't keep them the next day. So I'm going to look at a couple examples. Most people are familiar with Matthew's 5:17. That's probably the first one there.
Yeah.
Why don't you read that one? 5:17.
think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill.
So that word pleroo, if you look on, if you have a concordance with you, it'll say to accomplish, complete, expire, end, fulfill, fully preach, perfect, or perfect. So just doesn't mean to, because the particular scripture, especially this one, would make sense if it said, "Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to do away with." I mean, because that would be redundant. So very clear that would not be the case there. Let's see, Luke 24, verse 44 and 45. You want to read it?
Which verse?
Oh, I'm sorry, 24, 44, 45. It says, "And he said unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you, and while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled." And that's that word there, pleroo, "which were written in the law of Moshe and in the prophets and in the Psalms concerning me. Then open he their understanding, that they might understand the scriptures." Let's go Luke 2, verse 40. Says, "And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled," or pleroo there, "with wisdom, and the favor or grace of Elohim was upon him." Okay. So that's just a couple examples there. There's some other ones as well throughout the New Testament. But Yahuwah's ultimate plan is to have all the families of the earth join Israel in righteousness. So just to kind of recap some of the covenants that we have so far, or that we've covered thus far, we have Adam, where the woman's seed crushing the head of the other's seed. Noah recovered after Elohim's judgment, which led to Abraham, which also led to Isaac, and then Jacob establishing a family. Then we go to Moses, who transformed a family into a nation of people with different tribes, leading up to David or Daud, who established the kingship of that nation. And then coming to the Mashiach or Messiah, who made redemption possible for all men to fulfill the promise to Adam and Abraham, stating that in your seed will all the families of the earth be blessed. So lastly, coming to the covenant of peace, which not much is known on this particular covenant. It was, however, given to one particular individual. We're going to read here in Numbers 25, verse 12. Actually, you can read okay, let's just start at 1 and read down to 12. That way we can kind of just get the story on what happened in this particular covenant.
Alright.
Alright.
And Yashra'al abode in, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. And Yashra'al joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the sovereign was kindled against Yashra'al. And the sovereign said unto Moshe, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the sovereign against the sun, that the fierce anger of the sovereign may be burned away from Yashra'al. And Moshe said unto the judges of Yashra'al, slay ye every one his men that were joined unto Baal. And behold, one of the children of Yashra'al came and brought unto his brethren a Midianite woman in the sight of Moshe, and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Yashra'al, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand. And he went after the man of Yashra'al into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Yashra'al and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed from the children of Yashra'al. And those that died in the plague were 24,000. And the sovereign spake unto Moshe, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, had turned my wrath away from the children of Yashra'al, while he was zealous for my sake among them, that I consume not the children of Yashra'al in my jealousy. Wherefore, say, behold, I give unto him my covenant of peace.
So I just wanted to kind of go over that story just because it gives a little bit of insight on what was taking place where Israel was already joining to other gods. And so we know that the Most High is against that, and anytime that has happened, he's done it before where he's asked that those people just be wiped out, but he has replaced them in other instances as well. But Phinehas being given that covenant of peace, that's really all that was kind of touched on, but we know that it's a covenant to come once the Messiah, or Mashiach, makes his return and establishes a covenant of peace again. So all the covenants, even though we didn't happen to, in any of the passages that we read, something that's also attached with all the covenants is salt, which is a basic ingredient of life, and we know that it's essential for life. It's essential for all your bodily functions with potassium and other elements that we use, and we know that it is a life preserver. We know that we can a preserver itself. So it's also attached with all the covenants, and I just wanted to kind of touch on one Old Testament one and one New Testament one. So we'll look at Leviticus 2:13. We'll wrap this lesson up here. Leviticus 2:13. And then if someone can read Matthew 5:13. So those two.
Leviticus 2:13. And every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt. Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy Elohim to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt.
And
Matthew 5, Lamadyahu 5:13. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out, and to be trodden under the foot of man.
so just some scriptures on good salt. Also another one is Numbers. As we read this one as well, Numbers 18 and 19.
Numbers, Bamidbar 18:19. Read. All the heave offerings of the holy thing, or Kodesh, or set apart thing, which the children of Yashra'al offer to the sovereign, have I given thee, and thy son and thy daughter, with thee, by a statute forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the sovereign unto thee, and to thy seed with thee.
So So I just wanted to point those out to see that. So a lot of all your meat offerings would have salt with them. And that covenants with using salts is a part of a lot of the everlasting covenants that we have. So just two closing scriptures I'll read here. Psalms 89. I'm going to start at verse 28. It says, "My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven," of Shamayim. "If his children forsake my law and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then I will visit their transgression with the rod, and their iniquity with stripes. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my set apartness that I will not lie unto Daud," or David. "His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in Shamayim, or heaven, Selah." So just stating that even through the breaking of the statutes of the commandments, Israel would not be forsaken. The promises would still be bestowed to Daud that were mentioned. Be a nation of kings and priests, as stated before. And then the last one I'm going to read is Luke, 1st chapter, just 32 and 33. So it says, "He shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Highest, and Yahuwah Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father Daud. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end." So we know who this is talking about, right? This is the Messiah, hopefully, if everyone didn't know. So the Mashiach's kingdom will reign forever. And what lineage he comes through, but even though he is before, just stating that here. So that's just kind of, like I said, this was not my lesson. This was just a review of Lamadyahu's lesson. Very detailed lesson. I just kind of like going through some of the lessons and reviewing some of the points to bring out. I thought this one was a really good one, especially how all the covenants add up. They don't take away from anything, but they just continue to build and strengthen upon one another. And just always remembering that there are parts that were conditional, like with Moses or the Mosaic covenant. But even still, even with those conditions being broken, he still had an ultimate redemptive plan through the Mashiach, through the Messiah, to bring us back together and to restore and to keep us under that covenant and to renew us in that covenant. So that's pretty much the lesson there. Does anybody have any other questions or statements they'd like to make in regards to covenants or things like that? All right, well, I guess that's it. And,